Hi, I'm Kaylee, and today I want to talk about some of the pros and cons of reading classics. I love to read classics. There's something about classics that is so attractive to me. So I thought today we would discuss what are some of the pros and cons, some of the good things, some of the bad things, the good, the bad, and the ugly of reading classics. And I have my Jane Austen mug with some delicious tea because my voice is about to give out. But we're gonna do the best we can. And please do subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and give this video a big thumbs up if you love classics as much as I do. I feel like a lot of people are kind of intimidated by the word classics, like it's just some big, huge monster that's gonna devour your reading or something. But I tell you, once you get in there and you really start to read classics, there are so many great things that make it really worth the time and effort. But there are also some cons. So we're just gonna talk about that today. First, let's get into the pros. One of the best things about reading classics is you really get a snapshot of history from that time period, from those voices, those people who lived in that time. You get to learn about how other people lived and how they thought and what they believed and what was important to them. It's not always pretty, but it is interesting, and I think it's important to know our history. And also I find that a lot of the time, studying history gives me hope for the future. For instance, during the pandemic in 2020, it actually brought me a lot of comfort to learn about the pandemic in 1918 with the Spanish influenza, because it sort of puts things into a more global perspective, a historical perspective. Generations before us, those people weathered the storm, and that gives me hope that we can weather this storm as well. So that's one of the reasons why I love learning about history and classics, is because it kind of gives you this bigger picture perspective that can be really comforting. It can be really inspiring. Another reason why I love reading classics is the rich language. Such beautifully complex sentences and rich ideas with really vivid words just depicted in this powerful way. Your vocabulary will definitely grow if you read classics. And there's a reason that classics become classics, that they continue to be well known through ages and ages of time, is because they're super well written and they tell important stories. All that beautiful, rich language just kind of washes over you and drags you into that beautiful world. Classics are fantastic because they tell really meaningful stories with deep themes. Stories about people who had courage and patience and faith and kindness. These are stories that will teach you how to live and will inspire you to be a better version of yourself. These are stories about people who overcame impossible obstacles, people who remained steadfast in the face of oppression, people who had patience and endurance, and that really inspires me. I look at these stories and I say, wow, I want to be more like that. I want to be a better person. And also, they're just interesting and exciting stories. When I think of some of my favorite Dickens or Jane Austen or even Shakespeare, those are just exciting and fun to read about. Sometimes when I think about different story tropes, and you think, well, how did that trope become a thing? Well, it's because, this author did it first. Another reason that I really love classics is the relatable characters. It's so interesting to see how hundreds of years ago, an author wrote this character with this personality that is so recognizable and so relatable. And I think, that's just like that person that I know. I can easily compare them to people that I know today. It's just so funny how humanity never really changes. In every age, in every society, there are people who are just striving to meet their basic human needs. They want to find fulfilling work and shelter and family and companionship and a purpose in life. They all want to find love, just as we do. Relatable characters. So good. And the other reason why I love to read classics is the universal themes. These are stories about people who are facing many of the same social issues and inner struggles that we face today. There are themes in classics that will just apply to any society, every culture, in every era. The basic need for love, hope, and faith. Those universal themes, they are timeless, and they speak to us today just the way that they spoke to people back then. And now that I have waxed poetic talking about all the reasons why I love classics and classics are amazing and everyone should read classics, now we're going to talk about the cons. Oh no, now we get into some of the not so happy things about classics. Well, first of all, the elephant in the room, racism in classics and sexism in classics. It's unfortunate, it's upsetting to read about, it's always wrong in every era, in every society, in every culture. It's never a good thing. But I try to look at it as a historical look at the way things used to be, and then I can be glad to see how far our society has come, how much we have improved to get away from these backward, outdated ideas. And I also feel like it's a caution to all of us to not just accept whatever your society accepts as a normal morality. You shouldn't be taking your morals from what society says is okay. Your morality about what is right and wrong should come from God, who never changes. Right and wrong should always be the same. Doesn't matter what your culture says or what your society says. And when you see racism and sexism in classics, it's because they just accepted the norm that their society presented to them instead of letting their morality come from God. So whenever I see something that is upsetting like that in classics, I try to just kind of take a lesson from that and not let it upset me too badly. Another thing in classics that I really don't like is the high expectations that I tend to put on classics. It's like this overhyped book from centuries of readers that have overhyped it. It's just really easy to get your hopes up and expect every classic to be a perfect book. And you just expect it to be amazing. And then it's really easy to get disappointed when maybe it wasn't quite what you thought that it was going to be. You just can't expect every book to knock it out of the park and be your perfect book. But somehow, whenever I read a classic, I tend to really put high expectations on that book. Like I think I'm just going to love every single thing in it. And that don't always happen. Another thing that is a con when reading classics is the pressure from everyone who knows that you're reading a classic. This culture of highbrow readers who think that you have to be an expert in order to read a classic, apparently. Or that you just have to love every classic, and if you didn't love it, then you're just ignorant. When I express that I didn't like a certain classic, I've been told that you just don't understand classics. Because of course, well, you must be stupid if you would dare to dislike or criticize a classic book. I mean, don't you dare say anything against a classic unless you are an expert in literature. That kind of negative pressure just should not exist. You don't have to be an expert to read classics. You don't have to be an expert to enjoy classics or to dislike or criticize classics. You don't have to have a doctorate college degree in English literature in order to say something and express an opinion about classics. But there are those people out there that's how they think. And I'm just gonna ignore those people and say whatever I want to about classics. The next thing that I don't like about reading classics is that I tend to read much more critically when I'm reading a classic. So instead of reading just for fun, I tend to read much more analytically. And I really feel this pressure, just from me, really, just me putting pressure on myself. Like I have to write a really insightful review, and I have to deconstruct the themes and research the history. Sometimes I enjoy doing those things and thinking about the themes and learning about the history. If I get inspired by something that makes me want to kind of dig deeper, then great. But sometimes I just want to coast along, reading something that is fun and enjoyable and not really thinking about it too much, but just sort of along for the ride reading. And a lot of the time with classics, I feel like I can't do that. I feel like I have to be doing some deeper something behind it. And it shouldn't be like that. I should be able to just read it for fun, just no matter what type of book it is. But that's just me putting pressure on myself to be perfect or to write the perfect review or something like that. When sometimes a book is there, maybe it's just to have fun. And maybe if I read it a second time, then I might get all analytical. I'm such a mood reader too, so it kind of depends on what mood I'm in. If I'm in just a fun reading mood or if I'm in more of an analytical, dig deeper reading mood. So, just kind of depends. All right, those are some of the pros and cons, some of the good things and the bad things, the good, the bad, and the ugly about reading classics. I'm sure that as soon as I finish filming, I will think of 3 or 4 other things that I should have included and talked about, but these are my thoughts at the moment. So let's start a discussion down in the comments for all the things that I forgot to mention. What are some of your favorite things about reading classics? And what are some of the not so favorite, the bad and the ugly things about reading classics that you do not enjoy? Leave me a comment down below and we will discuss. And leave me a comment and let me know, what is your favorite classic book? Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and remember, the right book in the right hands at the right time can change the world.